Hey everybody, it's my 125 gallon tank, and this is not really going to be a before and after since we've already started with the before, so this is just going to kind of be an and after. And what I wanted to do while the water was low is have a look both inside the tank and the filter while I've got the filter open. I was really surprised at how clean it was, but I did a filter change anyway. And I just wanted to show you the inside of what a canister filter looked like. If you've never seen one, it's just a series of trays. I normally put a liner in the bottom, but I didn't have one for this top section, so it doesn't matter. That piece of white you see there is a piece of PVC pipe. The UV inside here deteriorated the plastic, and I wound up having to kind of make my own little piece of plastic there for the water to flow down into the bottom. So it's just a series of trays. The tray at the bottom has nothing but filtration, mechanical filter, and then as the trays go up through the stack, I have less and less mechanical filtration and more biological filtration until we get to this top tray here, and that's all just biological filtration there. That's not any kind of mechanical filtration at all. Those little pot scrubbies just serve as surface area for bacteria to live, and so that's what I keep inside one of my canister filters. Those, I have ceramic rings, I have little plastic balls, I've got all kind of stuff for the bacteria to live on. I've also been in here, in addition to wiping the glass down, I've been pulling a lot of Water Sprite out of here. I had masses of it, and so what I've tried to do is keep the main, I'll call it the mother plant, and I've thinned out all the little babies. But what happens is you'll find when you get all the way down into the sort of main root mass there, as much as it looks like one huge root mass, when you start getting into it and looking more and more carefully and closely, you'll start to see the center points of several different plants. So I could continue separating this out and separating it apart more and more, and I would eventually be left with smaller, spindlier plants. So I'm going to keep this as the mother plant. You can see I do have some of it's got that weird growth on it. I'm not sure why it does that, but that's one of the plants in there. You can see here's more of that growth. But then the other plants are normal looking broadleaf Water Sprite. And so this is all going to stay in here, and it can now sort of spread out and grow and do its thing. So remember, I do sell my Water Sprite, and I now just collected up a bucket full of it, and I've got that in my grow out tank in the other room. So if you're interested, I'll put my email down below. I do a couple of quart-sized Ziploc baggies full of Water Sprite or Java Fern or whatever you want, whatever I've got for sale at the time, and I do it for $22 for everything, shipping included, and you'll get a lot of plants for your money. So if you're interested in that, check out my email down below. I've got a lot of that floating Water Sprite right there, and I'll be happy to send some of it to you if you contact me. In the meantime, I'm going to get back on with my water change, and we will come back and have a look at this tank when it's finished. I've already wiped down the glass. I'm basically just waiting for it to drain at this point, and then we're going to fill it back up, put the filter together, and then once all of the detritus and everything is sort of settled down, we'll get in there and we'll do our final after look at the tank. So sit tight, give me a little while, and we'll have a look at the tank when it's all done. Alright everybody, there's the best I can do getting the whole tank in one frame there. If I get any further back, we're going to start seeing some of the waterfall tank that you can no doubt hear so loudly just off to our right, although I'm sure you can't hear which direction it's coming from. But all that splashing you hear is my waterfall tank. I've got all the other lights in the room turned off so that this tank doesn't have a bunch of glare on it, and we'll get a little bit better idea of what's in the tank rather than what's on the outside of it this time. So it looks pretty good. I'm really happy with it. I wish I'd have done a little better job cleaning the glass down. I've already seen 3 or 4 spots where I've missed wiping it down. One of them is sort of right there. You can kind of see that grunge on the glass. There's a few spots like that here and there that aren't terribly noticeable until you really focus on them, so I won't focus too much more on any of that. But that's what you can see with the Water Sprite now that it's been thinned out. Even though that is sort of a grouping of plants packed together, it very much gives the impression of one central floating plant. And of course I've got all that beautiful root development, and you can even see down here I've got some of the roots are flowing in the current. I did adjust the power head. I adjusted it so that it blows more forward rather than sort of down like I had it before. There's an appearance from my rainbow shark. We don't see that one too terribly often. That fish just looks so good in this tank. I am so happy I moved it in here. I really wish I had done that a long time ago. It looks like it was just born to be in this tank. So I had said before that all of the gravel that was piled up in the back there was a result of the power head and the way the power head was pushing the water. It was really just blowing the gravel everywhere, and that was probably contributing into it. But I noticed what it really was one of my small chocolate zebra plecos was burrowing down underneath of the rocks down here, and it was kicking its tail out this way and throwing on, you know, it was basically digging itself a cave, and that's why all of those rocks were getting all piled up like that. So I moved them back, and we'll see if it doesn't get in there and start trying to dig its cave out again. The other thing I will say, I didn't even notice my tenopoma hiding in the leaves right there. It really is a stealthy fish. This fern right here, I don't know what it is called. It is some type of Java fern, and it's always sort of struggled to hang on. And in this particular water change, I was able to get some babies off of it. If you see this little one here, that little tiny one right there, those are little baby developments. In fact, that little white thing you can see right there is the root growth coming off of this new fern. That one is so small that I left them on there, but I did pick a few off that were a little bit bigger than that. And I'm not, you know, they're still small, not big size, but they are available right now as well. So if you are interested in any plants, for a limited time, I can throw one of those Java ferns in with your batch of whatever else you wind up getting. Again, very limited supply of those, so I can throw one of those in with like the Java Windelov, and then again I got the loads and loads of Water Sprite. I've got standard Java fern, and right now I might actually be able to do a snip or two of some temple plant if you're interested. So moving on, I also removed a couple of the taller, whatever this stuff is called. I'm drawing a blank at the moment. Water lilies, there we go. Tiger lotus, if you want to call it lotus. It's a water lily, whatever way you want to call it. One of them was at the surface, another one was just below the surface and was kind of covered in some green grungy stuff, so we went ahead and pulled that one out, and now that looks a lot better. And I also noticed that I was getting very limited water flow, even though nothing seemed to be impeding the flow of water. But when I got in there, if you'll see, the intake is now nice and clean. That had a few plants like sort of stuck to it, and what was really going on was a bunch of roots and stuff were on the inside of it, and they weren't, you know, growing and flowing up inside the pipe, which I've seen happen before. They really were just sort of around that screen. So I took it off, I cleaned it out from the inside out, got that all cleaned out, and now the filter is flowing nice and vigorously again. So you can see I have one little section up here blowing out across the surface, and then the rest of the bar here actually blows down across the back. So we've got the water blowing down the back, and then I've got a 1,500 gallon per hour power head blowing across the back. I always say blowing as though it's air, flowing, moving the water. You get the idea. So what we get is a current that goes around the tank in a clockwise flow, but I also get water that goes down the back and pushes through, and it really keeps a lot of the detritus moving around in this tank, which then allows it to be picked up by the filter. And you can see that there's a lot of places for the detritus to settle and collect and hide in this tank, and it does get really dirty. I do try to get in there and do gravel vacs from time to time, especially down this end, all these larger pieces of rock and flat material. Believe it or not, this big piece of wood you can see right here, it goes all the way up in here and all the way down to the glass, and it's one big piece of wood, and it is also convex. It is very much shaped like that, and if you lift that up, it's just a huge collection of moam and filth and grunge and whatever, but it's a big cave in there if any fish ever wants to go down in there. But every time I've ever lifted it up, or you can even take the gravel vac and you can just stick the gravel vac down inside, and when I do that, it just turns black and just filth starts moving up through the gravel vac, and it really cleans a bunch of junk out of there. I did not do that tonight, but I did get in there by hand and stirred the corners and got everything sort of swirling around into the water column. while I was doing the water change, and we drained a bunch of it that way before I filled the tank back up. And lastly, I will say I did check the nitrates just for the hell of it and get an idea what was going on with the tank. And as I suspected, they were red, but they weren't, you know, dark red. So we were probably looking realistically between 60 parts per million and 75, maybe 80 parts per million on the top side. So I did about a 50% water change, so you can figure we're about half of that now. We'll call it 40 parts per million. If I did a nitrate test now, I would imagine we'd still turn red, but we'd sort of be orangish red. We'd be right at the top of that 40 parts per million, which is fine with me, especially in this planted tank. All those nitrates go to good use and give me nice, good, lush green plant growth. So there you go. There's a little look at my 125 now that we've done some basic maintenance on it, got it all cleaned up and looking good. My Tenopoma is actually going to halfway, sort of almost come out and make a little appearance for us. He's a little skittish after all the big water change and everything happening, so I can't say that I blame him necessarily if half my world vanished and then came back after, you know, 20 minutes or so. I'd be a little disconcerted at the moment myself. So there you go. Make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be. Don't forget to check down below for my email if you're interested in aquatic plants. And then don't forget, this one is my 125-gallon African-themed tank. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you real soon in the next one.